didn't record it. Now I started recording. That we would rehash it again and go through some of the materials that we actually handed out at DAC days to help people be more confident talking about GI Pro 3 and exactly how it is working and what it's doing in the animal. So we really quickly went through digestive function, the stomach really small in relation to the rest of the GI tract, the small intestine. There's acid in the stomach, there's enzymes in the small intestine. Most of our carbohydrates, our sugars and starches, are supposed to be digested here in the small intestine. The grain is supposed to be digested here in the small intestine, and it's not really meant to flow into the hindgut of the horse. But in the hindgut, this is where all the fermentation occurs. This is where all the microbes, the yeast, fungi, microbes, is collectively we call it the microbiome. This is the powerhouse to the horse. Without this, your horse will fail. We used to say no foot, no horse, or no hoof, no horse, but really it's no gut, no horse. If you don't have a good, strong, healthy gut, the horse will die. There are two things that the horse needs: water and fiber. And from fiber, it can get a lot of its nutrients. But if it doesn't have the microbiome, all those bugs, then it can't break down that fiber. It's the bugs that break down the fiber. So that hindgut starts with the cecum, which is a blind sac. I've got it highlighted there in yellow, and then the large colon and the small colon. And you know, when I lay it out, I actually make a model of this. The stomach, I use a gallon water jug or milk jug. The small intestine, I use a piece of hose. And then in the large intestine, the large colon, the cecum, I use dryer vent, the silver dryer vent hose. So you can kind of visualize the size differences between those. And as I mentioned, in this hindgut section of the animal, it's just all microbial fermentation. It takes a long time for food to pass through here because that bacteria is constantly breaking it down. But it's easy for things to go wrong here. And unfortunately, what has happened in the industry is there are a lot of gut health supplements on the market. But when it comes to horses, horses are very different from other animals in that they have that acidic stomach and then the enzymes in the small intestine. So any probiotic or prebiotic or any kind of gut health supplement that's going to be supporting the microbiome has to get through those two areas in order to make it to the hindgut. And that has been a challenge to date. In the small colon, we're really just absorbing moisture out of that non-digested fecal material, forming fecal balls that are stored in the small colon until they're excreted. You know, we mentioned the microbiome, and it actually acts as another organ. It's absolutely critical. It communicates with the brain, and the brain communicates with the gut bugs. And I think the simplest way for people to understand this is if you've ever craved salty or sweet foods, it's the bugs in your gut that are actually telling you that, right? Um, the microbiome collectively, and it's very diverse, there's all kinds of microbes in there, live organisms, harvests nutrients and extracts energy from the diet. So when it's breaking down that fiber, it is getting nutrients out of that fiber and it's getting energy out of that. It also, this microbiome, there are certain bugs that can resist the growth of bad bacteria, pathogens. Okay, so it is part of your immune system and also developing the immune system. And there's 70% of your immune system is in the gut. So we've talked about one of the key things is the leaky gut, right? As a function of or a symptom of poor gut health. And we have on the left-hand side, you see the healthy gut and those kind of arms that are linking the cells. We call those tight junctions. And in a healthy gut, they're nice and held tight together. But in an animal that's been stressed, gone through some kind of disease state, heat stress, exercise stress, any kind of stress or disease, then the first thing that will happen is there's inflammation and those tight junctions get damaged and will die and separate. And then you can see that the cells lining the wall of the intestine separate. And now we have bad bacteria, pathogens, toxins flowing into the bloodstream, causing the systemic kind of whole body inflammation. All right. And, we mentioned that forage is the most important part of the horse's diet. So that we need to have fiber in the gut. It's the most important thing, and large quantities of it. But horses can't digest fiber. It's actually the microbiome that digests that fiber. If you take a horse and you kill all the bugs in its hindgut, the horse will die pretty quickly. We know that we can change the diet, and that can cause diarrhea or weight loss, right? That was really one of the first realizations back, that, oh, the gut bugs, they have an important role in the health of the animal. They might be the connection between disease and symptom. The symptoms that we're seeing is it's going through that gut microbiome. So we need it. This is all just showing how important it is and how we need to keep it healthy. Now, when we think about the biotics, antibiotics, they kill everything, right? Broad classes of bad bacteria, but they can also kill the good bacteria as well. Now, when we're talking about the gut microbiome, we're really talking about these beneficial microbes that live in the gut, right? And our goal is to keep them diverse and in large quantities. So we want lots of different variety, and we want them in large quantities. So what we do is we utilize things like prebiotics and probiotics to help support that microbiome. Probiotics are live microorganisms that we're putting into the gut, right? So in order to be considered a probiotic, it must be arrive. It must arrive alive to the hindgut in order to work. And that's been a breakdown, all right? Getting through that acidic stomach and the small intestine has been a challenge for probiotics. So we set out to fix that. Prebiotics, on the other hand, are just the food that these bugs like to eat. So if we're trying to enhance a certain type of bug, we're going to make sure that we're feeding a certain type of prebiotic that they might like to eat. We know that the outer wall of yeast and some things like beet pulp, these are really good prebiotics. And then those beneficial microbes actually make postbiotics. They make metabolites that have a beneficial effect on the animal. Things like B vitamins. B vitamins are made by the gut bugs and can be considered a postbiotic. We're going to go into another class, which is the GI Pro 3, and that is a proteobiotic. And a proteobiotic actually has some pretty specific health benefits in that it can interfere with the communication between pathogenic or bad bacteria. And that is really groundbreaking. So as I mentioned, there's really been a breakdown in the industry when it comes to probiotics, commercially available probiotics, that they're not meeting the label claim. They're not arriving alive, even in the container and the packaging, let alone into the hindgut of the horse. So we as Performance Horse Nutrition said we've got to do better. We've got to bring to our clients a better option. So we partnered up with Kemin, and we set about finding, it started out, we wanted to find a probiotic that could withstand manufacturing, transport, storage conditions, all those kinds of things. So we went and we tested this 3-prong probiotic, and we tested it under different conditions. We went on to then know that this is actually called a proteobiotic because it has some very specific health benefits to the animal. But at first, it was just, we've got this 3-strain probiotic, and we want to make sure that it can withstand temperature and storage. So why we know that this was different to just a postbiotic. It's not just like a B vitamin or anything else that these bugs, good bugs in the gut make, is we know that proteobiotics have specific, and if you Google the word proteobiotic, it's so new, you will find very few papers because this is a really new cutting edge technology, and we're really excited to be leading animal nutrition with this technology. And so we want to make sure that we don't want to unbalance bacteria, right? We want there's a happy balance in the gut of all the different types of bacteria, and we know that probiotics can help maintain that balance. I mentioned that they can interfere with the communication between bad bacteria. The fancy word, if you want to get all technical, is called quorum sensing, but we don't need to talk about that. All it is it's interfering with that cell-to-cell communication. Why pathogenic bacteria are so dangerous is they replicate very, very quickly by talking to each other. They capitalize on weaknesses in the host, whether that be weaknesses, breakdown in the nasal tissue for respiratory diseases, or a lot of times it's gut diseases, and they're capitalizing on weaknesses in that tissue, and they're talking to each other, and they're saying replicate here and go there, and proteobiotics can interfere with that communication. So it stops them being able to talk to each other. By interfering, then we stop them sticking, adhering to the cell wall, to the intestinal wall, and we just flush them out the digestive system. So pH and GI Pro 3 it's 3 strains of probiotics that collectively form this proteobiotic. Will survive pelleting, high temperatures. The acid in the stomach, yes, it will survive. Sitting on a shelf, actually, it's what we call this acorn effect, that it actually needs to be activated by the acid in the stomach in order to kind of peel away that outer coating that protects it so that it can get to the hindgut and be alive. So it will sit on the shelf for years. It's got a very long shelf life. And so it inhibits, when we decided on which bugs we wanted to put in it, we're like, okay, we've found a way that we can produce a probiotic that is going to withstand temperature and get to the hindgut and storage and all of that. But what are the main problems in horses? What are the main bacteria that we might want to interact and inhibit? And we know Clostridium causes diarrhea, Rhodococcus, Streptococcus, Salmonella, but respiratory issues, strangle, Salmonella. These are probably some of the most common bacterial infections in horses that are very contagious and have a huge impact on the industry. So that's why we chose those specific probiotics, because they actually can interfere with the communication of these bad bacteria. So that's why we chose those. Where can you find it? In the Rescue Aid paste, in the Rescue Aid powder, in the DDA. It's in its therapeutic doses here. It's in a supportive dose and a bunch of other products. And if you skim through the catalog, you'll see the little logo at the bottom of all the pages that have it in there. But if you're really looking for a therapeutic punch of GI Pro 3, you're going to find it in the Rescue Aid products and the DAC digestive feed additive. We've also got the Butapearl in the Rescue Aid, which is going to also help with healing those tight junctions. So there was a handout that you can get from your rep, your territory manager, and we put this together so that it would be much more helpful for you to have something to hand to customers when you're describing this GI Pro 3. And so, is your horse experiencing any of these? Diarrhea, anxiety, allergies, lethargy, poor coat quality? These are all symptoms of poor digestive health, right? We know that stress, diet, the environment can impact your horse's performance, therefore damaging the GI tract. The GI tract is so important. Absorption of nutrients, fiber passage and fermentation by those bugs. More than 70% of the immune system is in your GI tract, those bugs. So we worked to create a solution. We came up with GI Pro 3. It stops the communication of those bad bugs. So we mentioned that the conventional probiotics just aren't meeting the mark. GI Pro 3 is proven by science that it will arrive alive. And here's kind of the breakdown of how it's doing it. It releases compounds that target the bad bugs, protecting the good bugs, stops communication between those bad bugs so they can't have those negative impacts. And it also releases proteins that are anti-inflammatory, so to help heal that intestinal health. Kind of the difference between probiotic, proteobiotic, and prebiotic also. And so this, on this gray background, this is a 2-page handout that we gave to folks that came to DAC days, but if you get with your territory manager, they can give it to you. It's also going to be in the newest iteration of the catalog, which should be out soon. So then I went on to talk about, let me see if I can make this come up here. There we go. We went on to talk about what's new. I know that every year maybe we launch new products or we try to make changes if we've improved any products. We listen to you guys and we make improvements. And so I discuss those later on in the day. The DAC metabolic. I know one of the quickest ways to get complaints is to change the way a product looks. But we went ahead and we changed the way the metabolic looked. It looks completely different. You can see here on the left-hand side, it was a thin, fine, small, whitish pellet. And now when you get it, it is a darker, bigger green looking pellet. So we changed the manufacturer. We were having this manufactured at a facility that manufactures milk products, so they don't have any kind of colored ingredients that might contaminate those milk products. So it was whey-based. But we were having some issues with palatability and smell, so we moved it to a different manufacturer. Actually, Kalmbach is manufacturing this for us now, and the look has completely changed. The active ingredients, the amount of chromium, the amount of magnesium is still exactly the same. It's just more palatable and does not smell. The Breeder's Choice Plus, this was another huge improvement, is we added the Chemtrace Chromium and the Calci powder. And why we chose to add both of those, the Calci powder, we know improves bone density. And a lot of research has shown that. And so that foal is developing in utero, and we, through science, made the decision that using the calci powder, the marine-derived calcium, in this product that we're feeding to broodmares, that was going to improve bone health in that embryo and in that fetus developing in that foal in utero. So that was really important to us. When it came to the Chemtrace Chromium, we added the Chemtrace Chromium because research has shown that chromium enhances reproduction. It reduces a uterine infection, increases conception rate, pregnancy rates. It also reduces the days to first service. So think about if you send your mare off to a breeding farm, every day that she's there, you're getting charged a fortune. And if we can get her to come into heat quickly and get pregnant that first time around, then it's going to cost you a lot less, right? Because she's not there. And if she misses that first time, then she's got to stay there till the next cycle, and you're paying for that. So anything that we can do to improve those conception rates and increase the number of viable oocytes, that's the eggs. So the small increase in price on the Breeder's Choice Plus gives you huge, huge benefits. So the Chemtrace Chromium and the Calci powder really make this product stand apart. This is my choice. Now, if you have broodmares, you want to give them, you really want to level up their nutrition, then before she even goes to the breeding shed, you want to make sure she's on the Breeder's Choice Plus all the way through pregnancy, even into lactation. And then once you wean her, if she's not going to have more babies, she can go back onto something like Orange. But if she's going to continue to have foals, you want to keep her on Breeder's Choice Plus all the time. If you wanted to just have one mineral and you're like, okay, I really don't want to have to buy two, can the foal eat this as well up to weaning? Yes, the foal can eat this up to weaning, and then you'd switch it over to the colt girl. The fly control. Oh, so in the past, we only had fly control, the natural fly control, in the pasture lick product. It is now going to be available in a 40-pound bag. It's got a very low feeding rate, so this 40-pound bag will last you a long time. But all the animals on the property need to be on this fly control, right? It's not like, oh, I can just feed it to the horses in the stall and the ones out in the paddock don't get it. No, that why we're selling it in the bag is, if you've got horses out in the paddock that don't come into the stalls, great, they're on the pasture lick. But if the horses in the stall didn't have any fly control, so now every horse has the option of utilizing the fly control. So that is another addition to the lineup. And now the pre-buff, I know that you guys have seen some back orders or it's not available, it's here or there. I wanted to be transparent in DAC days and kind of explain what happens when a product is on back order. If it's our doing, right? If it's not just, manufacturing, or there's an ingredient that's not available. We've had some issues with the pre-buff getting solid, gassing. And so we pride ourselves in selling the highest quality supplements. And it wasn't 100%, so we're working on it, right? So know that we haven't just pulled this off the shelf to annoy you all. We've done this to make sure that we are selling you the best product possible quality-wise. Quality control is extremely important. The Cool Gut, no changes have been made yet, but the Cool Gut is also manufactured at that same facility that is the milk company, that won't have any colored ingredients contaminating their facility. So the Cool Gut is a smaller white pellet, and it limits other technologies that we might want to put into that, because that smaller pellet uses a lot of heat and pressure, and I know we've had some palatability issues, so we're actually investigating another manufacturer. So stay tuned, we'll keep you up to date. But if you notice a change in the color of the Cool Gut and you didn't hear any information about it, then that is what it is. We've changed manufacturer. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about, because I know that there's been an outbreak of EHV, equine herpes virus, right? Also known as equine rhinopneumonitis. It's a, it's a family of very highly contagious viruses found in horses, right? It's one of 9 herpes virus, EHV1, V3, V4, pose the highest disease risk to horses, but not to people, okay? It's primarily a respiratory disease and can cause abortions and stillborn in horses. Sometimes you can get some neurological disorders, but primarily what you're looking for: symptoms, fever, difficulty urinating, nasal discharge, cough, depression, head tilt, loss of tail tone like floppy tail, stumbling, weakness in the hind limbs, which may progress to all the limbs, unable to rise, and then also abortion in pregnant mares. How do you prevent this? Now, you know that I am completely transparent, and I think the worst thing in the world is to lie to people and tell them that, we've got a supplement that is going to fix EHV1. There is no supplement that is going to make a virus go away, right? Vaccinate your horses. That is the first line of defense against preventing EHV from affecting your horse to the point of death and abortion. They reduce the severity of the symptoms and the shedding. And they also reduce the risk of abortions. Nothing's going to completely take it all away, but these vaccines, if you have brood mares especially, you have to vaccinate, okay? If I know that there's a lot of sales going on right now, If you go to a sale and you buy a horse and you bring it back to your farm, isolate new horses or horses returning to the farm after an event for at least 21 days. Monitor them for signs of the disease. Keep pregnant mares with foals at their side in small groups, away, completely away from new or returning horses. Okay, so isolating, quarantine doesn't mean in the next field over. It means they cannot touch water troughs. They cannot kind of be within the general vicinity, a paddock away or a laneway away. But it's also about yourselves. This disease can survive up to 7 days in the environment. All right. So clean your equipment, clean housing, your shoes, your feed buckets, your brushes, tack. Don't share tack. Don't borrow other people's tack at equipment at shows or at events or at sales. And when you might just go to the sale and wander through the barns and look at all the horses, and maybe you don't buy anything. You pet a few horses. When you come home, before you come home, you wash your hands thoroughly, and I would I would be taking those shoes off before I entered my farm, and I would be disinfecting them. As far as treatment, there really isn't a treatment, right? You got to vaccinate prior to, but it's supportive care. So if your horse gets bad, it might be IV fluids, anti-inflammatory medicines. We know that the gut has a huge role in inflammation um, and the immune system. So anything that can support the gut is going to be supportive, but it will not cure it. And I have heard rumors on the street that there is another company that sells supplements that is telling people there is a supplement that can prevent or cure EHV. That is just a straight up lie. That is an absolute lie, and it really makes me very disappointed that people would say those kinds of things, because ultimately the only person that's getting hurt is the end user and the horses, because that is just a false. Educate people about cleanliness, about hygiene, about quarantine, not try and sell them witch oil. That is not going to work, right? So that is what we want to make sure. As far as the incubation, so I said it can survive in the environment for up to 7 days, right, under normal circumstances. Can be up to 1 month if the environmental conditions are perfect. But wash, rinse all surfaces. We've got the disinfection products. Allow it to dry. After the infection, the incubation period may be as short as 24 hours. So you might see symptoms within 24 hours if you brought a horse home, typically 4 to 6 days. But again, we want to make sure that we're quarantining those horses for at least 21 days. So that is all that I have. Any questions?